launch this PowerPoint and share the screen. All right, so mementos and souvenirs. How do we enhance our life stories with those kinds of things? We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the souvenirs that are in print. But so have you thought about it at all since you asked it last week? How we use those mementos to enhance our life stories as we tell them? Did you come up?
Well, I went beyond that just a little bit, but I'll bring that up later.
Okay.
But yeah, I remember going into somebody's home who was in our ward back a long time ago, and she had bells that she had collected from all over the world, little itty bitty bells, and she had little shelves in her house. Must have been 50 of them with little bells on them, and I was blown away that somebody would be that focused on one thing.
Yeah.
And that's got to mean something in a person's story. This is the kind of person they are. They were in love with this.
Okay.
And maybe there was a story with each one. You never know that.
Right. So I'm guessing the bells could be used as a driver to help you remember the story that's associated either with the collection or with each one, and to lead you to write stories about them. But what do you do with the bells? How do you, if you're maybe for your grandkids and they don't want to have those bells all over their house, how do you help them remember the bells? Take a picture? Is that good enough? Do you need to somehow collect them in some way, but they can look at them, but maybe they don't want to have them out the same way you did? I don't know.
Well, I'm not wrapped around bells, but in thinking about that, something that's small like that, or it could be large, but it could be that each page could have in the upper left, upper right, lower corner, whatever, a picture of a unique bell.
Okay.
I mean, you could do that, and then that would carry through the whole story. I love bells. Well, no, there's people that love cats. There's people that love all manner of things. I can't imagine some of that, but that's what happens, I think.
I didn't come prepared to show this because I'd have to go find it. But in York Vaser's and Desiree's book, they actually have their, what are they, plates? I don't know what they're made out of, but they're like metal plates that like sit on their fireplace, and they have a plate for each child from when they were born. They made these plates that are like memorializing the birth. And when they did the printed book, they actually took pictures of each of those plates and they put them on the page just kind of as a way to capture them and have them be shown in this book. But they didn't actually put the plates in the book, but photos of the plates, because that was part of their life history, their story.
Well, and so that adds to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's proof that this is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
It just depends upon the kind of person you are. What kind of family, what's that called? The kind of family traditions that you have.
Yeah.
And I think that the mementos echo the traditions, I would believe.
Yeah. So maybe you collect snow globes from wherever you travel across the world. You got your snow globe collection sitting out there or something.
Yeah.
It's kind of a way of tracking your history. So, yeah, I think it's certainly a way to help us remember stories and maybe help tell the stories. And maybe we don't need, maybe we take a photo of it. Maybe we don't. Somehow someone's going to preserve those or not. I think of it in my case as trophies, right? If I've got trophies from, well, most of the time they're from participating in sports as opposed to winning championships. Got this whole collection of trophies that we threw out from our kids. Should we have thrown them out? I don't know. But maybe the ones that you deem most important, you have a story that goes with them and there's a photo that goes with that to go into the story so you can see the trophy, and that's how you preserve that memory.
What other kind of mementos? Because what we've been talking about is something that has become a tradition in the person's life.
Right.
But what if I have a memento? Like, for example, I do have a memento, as I ponder it. We have collected the church missionary badges from all of our missions
Oh,
that are in the different languages that were available right there at the time.
okay.
So I've got maybe 4 or 5 that are different. I remember just grabbing one of these, putting on my suit, going to church there in the Baltic. And there was a lady that worked in the U.S. Embassy, and she turned around and looked at me and said, "What language is that?" And I hadn't realized that I'd put on one that was in Cambodian. And I laughed.
So
But
how
I don't know how kind of a story that is. Although if I were to write that up as a story, having a picture of that badge would be
yeah,
useful.
yeah. So what have you done with the badges? How have you collected those so that if someone wanted to see that, I mean, have you held on to them together? Are they in different places? Have you kind of created?
I hate to admit this, Kurt, they're in a paper box.
That's where all my mission stuff is in a box somewhere. So you can find admitting that to me.
Well, I know where it is because I was just looking at it a couple of days ago. But yeah, it's in a box.
So I think that I think kind of mementos we're talking about. I actually listed some other documents that we might use as mementos that aren't trophies and badges and coins and whatever. And we talked about some of them last week: newspaper, magazine clippings, birth records, certificates, genealogical information, letters and handwritten notes, emails and like digital letters, awards, commendations that might be certificates. They might also be actual things, right? Journal entries that maybe have a day that has a specific meaning. Yearbooks, I think we talked about last week. Maybe we have, I think my high school yearbooks are somewhere. They're in a box, but I mean, I imagine the stories I could think of if I actually had my high school. Paul's going to join us here in a minute. If I actually had my high school yearbooks and I had them around, what stories could I think of based on what's in my high school yearbooks?
Well, back in my day, and I don't know if this persists, when you have a high school yearbook, all your friends sign it.
Yeah.
And that's a flashback to a time that long ago.
So is there some part of a high school yearbook that you might capture with a photo or something and put in a story to go with a story? I guess that maybe how we use them, or do we have to keep the whole yearbook around, or do I feel like I'm throwing history away if I throw away my yearbook? I guess that's the kind of the question I think about when I think about what do I do with mementos in my life as part of my history.
Well, that's an interesting question because who's going to throw it away? You or your kids? I mean, things have to be gotten rid of.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, as I've processed my and worked on genealogy and looked at our own thing, I made a directory in my computer for each of the family members. And every time I found a document that had to do with that family member, I scanned it and put the image in their directory. Now, Julie has gotten numerous awards and certificates for her activity in horticulture and in the Master Gardener program. And the things just pile up. And, I wonder, I just stumbled on a pesticide applier's license that she has. Now, is there a story in that?
Oh.
There may well be.
Yeah. Paul probably agrees probably where I'm at, but what do you think about what do you keep? What do you do with stuff? Yearbooks, certificates,
Degrees.
degrees.
I
You
collect
collect degrees. You don't throw those away.
How many do you have?
Well, if you count the teaching credential, there's at least 4.
Yeah.
What do I do with them right now? They're just shoved away in a box somewhere.
And with those, there are stories, right? With those kinds of things, you wouldn't get rid of those, and there are stories. And sure, there's stories in yearbooks, but I'm not sure I need my whole high school yearbook to capture a story. There might be a page that's got me playing soccer or something on it, but I want to do what you did. I'm capture it digitally and archive it and be able to use it and remind me of a story or two. But I don't know. I think as we think about the boxes of stuff that we find of our own and our kids, I think most of mine's at my sister's house in the garage. They keep moving it. I think she still has a bunch of my stuff from my parents, which I would have thrown away probably if I had it, but I think Carrie's probably got a lot of that stuff. So to me, I guess I think about this, I think we use it as a reminder to help us write stories. We keep what's most important and the things that are most meaningful and collect. Hopefully we collect photos and digital archives of stuff. So we have a picture of that trophy from when we actually won something. And the one where we just participated, we don't necessarily need that trophy. We can use it for some other purpose. Maybe we do. I don't know. Maybe that was a big deal just to be there, just to be nominated. I'll let you guys comment on what I mean. How the lady with the bells. Those are obviously valuable, or someone who's collecting coins, they're valuable. But are they going to be valuable to the kids? But if there's a story with each coin or there's a story with each bell, you certainly want to write those and collect those and keep the story and have some way to remember what the bell or the coin looked like.
There's another part of this that I wonder about. I don't know how come we have this, but my wife Julie has her grandfather's stamp collection. I have no idea what to do with it. I'm not into stamps. I don't know anybody who is. This has got some value to somebody, but I don't know who. What do I do with it? When we look at those stamps, every now and then I wonder, well, like for example, I was going through my tools. I'm doing an inventory of stuff, okay? So I picked up a tool I had, a miter box, a steel miter box. The last person that had that was my father, who died 56, 57 years ago. I picked up a knife he had that he used for cutting tile and stuff, and I opened it up to change the blade. The person that opened up that knife before I did was my father. And as I thought about that, I don't know that this stuff goes into any kind of a personal history, but I felt a rush of love for my father. And I don't know that would matter to anybody else in the world. I mean, it's just a thing.
So I guess if you have a specific, I guess if it's me, if I have a specific memory of someone using something, I mean, I'd use, I don't obviously have anything. If I had this train set still that my grandfather gave me, who died 2 months after I was born, my grandfather passed away. He was a railroad engineer and a railroad trainer at the time, and he had a heart attack and died. I always thought, until my aunt just sent me her history that I was helping her produce, that he died actually on a train, which he did not. But he passed away while he was working for the railroad, and between the time I was born and 2 months later when he died, he'd given me this train set, one of those electric train sets, and I do have some stories that come to mind about playing with that electric train set in my garage at my house, because my other grandfather built a table for it to sit on and lower and raise from the ceiling so we could get it out of the way. Now, the train set may not be something that I would obviously I didn't hang on to it. I don't know what my parents did with it, but the memories I did hang on to. So the question is, did I record them? I honestly have asked around. I can't find anyone who has a photo of that train set, which makes me sad. Because I never took one, and there doesn't seem to be one that exists. So I think there's value in those, in this whether if there's some memory of Grandpa with the stamps that really is vivid, that turns into a story for Julie, then I would think you would share that story, and that would be part of your history. Maybe it's a journal entry about just your feelings you had that day when you came across the knife or the miter box. Maybe there's not a story that's attached to it, but maybe there is. And that's, I think, the role of these mementos, is they kind of call up to mind memories and stories. And if we're telling stories, the way we react with Grandpa and the stamps or the train or the miter box helps other people think of incidents they have in their life with things that they see sitting around that remind them and might call to mind their stories. And that may be the greatest value, as far as I think about it.
Well, that then points back to an emotion. And I wonder about the validity of recording an emotion that's launched by something or some action, what you see, what you do, what you hear.
Yeah.
Because do I want the parts of me that are tender-hearted to show up in my journal or in my personal history? I hate movies. I cry in movies.
I do too.
I feel dumb.
Paul, what do you want to show up in your journal, in your history? Paula writes a lot. She writes a lot more than I do in a journal. I don't do nearly enough. I'm only just started now, actually. I want to go back to my mission journal and redact everything so my kids don't read it.
I have a few torn pages myself.
You've already redacted.
But I want my kids to know all of me, the flaws and the tender-hearted things, the butt-headed things, the things that bothered me, the things that made me happy. If you're going to leave a record of yourself, you need to have the record of your whole self, not just your best self. I don't know. Of course, we all want everybody to remember us for our best self, but sometimes we're more relatable. We can make more difference to our those who come after us if we are just ourselves, not only our best self. That's my thought.
I don't know. I want to present myself in the best light possible. There was a time when I could look at a little kid and scowl and they'd run away crying. Now, I have tried really hard to repent of that and make it so that doesn't happen anymore. But one of my kids brought that up just a couple of days ago. Says, remember when you could just look at some little kid and they'd run away and cry? And I said, yeah, I remember that. I don't want to remember that.
But your kids remember, they think it's kind of interesting about you, maybe. So.
Well, it was part of me back in the day. That day is long and gone. I hope.
Yeah, okay. So in that respect, there are parts of me that, I've changed. And so I definitely don't want, those are the pages that are ripped out, the parts that where I've become a new creature, and I don't want the old cute creature hanging around anymore.
But is there value in that regard? When you think about the mementos, if we're not the same person, is there value in sharing a story that takes us from person A to person B that shows the change, as opposed to just presenting the person that we're we were, and then presenting a separate story of who we've become, and instead tell a story that shows the process of becoming, telling a story about our life. Is there value in that? Because I think for some of it, Alma did that, right? He talked about his change. I mean, he showed the ugly, but then he showed the new creature, and he showed the change, and there's value to all of us in that one, the way he shared it, and he shared it with his kids.
But he only shared the high parts. He didn't share the nits and grits.
That's true. And maybe that's what you do in your story, is you share, I wasn't always perfect. Still not, but I wasn't always who I am now. I actually went through these transformational times when I was this way, and maybe it's a minimalized description of it instead of giving all the detail of the ugliness. If there was ugliness, I don't know.
I think seeing that change makes it for a good story.
Yeah. I mean, you think about the whole way you build a story, the protagonist, what happens to protagonist? Where was the change? Where did that victory happen? Where did that new creature happen, and why? And through the details of that story, we inspire people that it's okay, you can do the same.
I don't know. Some stories of change don't seem to have much of a moral.
Yeah.
I founded a birding club in '93. One of the primary people who joined that club was very high up at BYU. And as I went through life, I went on a mission, and I lost my enthusiasm for birding. He went on a mission. He was a mission president. And the last week of his mission, he went on a birding tour. He's still deep involved in birding. And I am not. I was. And I guess the message there is that I found that doing the missionary work, working, whatever it was, I didn't do much. I didn't pound on doors or anything like that. But it changed me. And that is interesting, but it isn't me anymore.
But for a time, it was part of you.
It was
deeply part of you.
Yes.
So I think it's still worth sharing that story about that part of you that was drawn to that, and then this other part of you that became the different you. That's other stories, right? I mean, both of them reflect part of who you have been, and both of them probably are fit in somewhere with who you become.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, if I'm going to write about what I become, do I have to be proud of it?
That's a good question. Hopefully you are.
I think there's a lot of misdirected pride in this world, and I don't want to be holding on to the wrong kind. And I don't want to, beat my breast and say how good I am, because I really, frankly, don't think I am. But I think that that's a common thing that people have is self-depreciation. And I wouldn't want to write about that.
Okay.
I don't think.
And it's your obviously it's your books. It's your story. So you're gonna write what makes you comfortable. Obviously, the tendency, I think, when we write is to portray ourselves in the best light possible. And that feels to me sometimes a little dishonest.
Yeah.
So I want to burn the whole night. I do want to go back to the mementos category, because one of the things that came up, and I actually happen to have this in this PowerPoint, so I jumped forward to it. I think our number one, we talk about what do our kids want to see? What do they care about? I think the number one audience, we've talked about this before in other webinars, is us, right? I'm my first audience. What do I need to read about me? who's the first person that's going to read my journal? It's going to be me when I'm redacting. But I mean, you're the first one. The audience is you. How do you remember, keep those memories alive for yourself? And I show this because this is a book I'm actually working on right now, for a couple of Trithalls. Nancy is Sister Trithall. Her and her husband were the presidents. They were our stake presidents when we were young. They were the presidents of the Ukraine Kiev mission. And then he was the second president of the Ukraine Kiev temple after it was open. So after it had been open 3 years, beginning in 2013, he was called as the president of the temple in Ukraine. And this book that we're doing for them is a collection of letters, emails that she wrote home to their kids and their family and friends while they were serving. And there's a weekly letter in here. It actually kind of looks like this on the inside. It's a collection of her letters with photos and everything that happened week by week by week as they went through the mission. It's going to be a 3-volume set with a hardbound cover, about 200 pages a piece. And they're doing one copy. That's the reason I bring this up. For them, they're doing one copy of this 3-volume set for themselves, because they wanted to collect these letters in such a way that they were a nice place they could go to revisit those days and the memories they have, because they realize the number one audience is them. And now they'll show it to people, I'm sure, but the only copy they're printing is for themselves as a memento, as a memory.
It makes me think of going back to the yearbook. My graduating high school class has a Facebook page, and every now and then somebody will post something from our yearbook, and it's fun. There's for the 400 of us to share that memory together, and it really is just for us.
Yeah.
There's 400 of us, but it is just for us. Not in the Facebook page, I don't think, but that we're in the class.
So, I mean, honestly, doing this book with them, I actually found things about Paulas dad in this book, because they wrote about Paulas dad in one of her emails. Paula's parents bought their house in California from the Trithalls years ago. And something happened with regard to Facebook, and Paula and Sister Trithall went into one of the stories she shared with her family about Paula's dad and playing the piano when he came in to look at the house when he was going to buy it. So it was even a cool thing for me that I happened to stumble across that while we're doing this book. But mostly the book is for them. It's the audience of two. It's their memories of their mission captured in a way that they didn't rewrite anything. They just pulled the letters together, and we're creating a book for them so they can remember those days. And I think I worry a lot when I write about who's going to read this and what are they going to get from it. And I need to remind myself that sometimes it's just the Trithall experience. It's for me. It's so I can remember, because remembering helps me to continually recreate. It helps me with that part of Alma chapter 5 that says, "Can you feel so now?" And go back and remember what it was that made me feel like I felt that day.
I have a number of my stories on my computer. I don't often go back to them. I very seldom do. But when I do, I have trouble putting it down. Now maybe that's what you're talking about. Because I can't see myself going into a 3-volume set just to relive the past. Although I laugh at this. As a kid, when I was in the military, I was casting my mind forward to what I wanted to be when I got older. And I pictured myself in a rest home, in a rocking chair, on the front porch, rocking back and forth, chuckling about the things that happened in my life. Now, I tell you right now, that is the last thing I want. But I would like to chuckle about things that happened in my life. I wish I had more of those chuckle experiences.
You share that experience about you wouldn't want to have the 3 volumes, but that reminds me of why they did this in the first place, which wasn't so they could go read them. They wanted to index it. So at the back of each one of these volumes is an index of names of people that they came across, so that if they think about somebody and they want to go see what they remember about that person, they can go to the index, find the page, and go read that letter. And so that was the real reason they mostly wanted to do it, was so they'd have it organized and they could index it, so that they would be able to quickly go find that letter that they're going to read, because it reminds them about somebody who they met, the Chernock family, for example, like in this one that they met, or the Klebengats, who were the mission presidents at the time, who's now a general authority. He just spoke in conference. And what they learned from those people, and that's the real reason they wanted, was to be able to occasionally go find those memories and be able to find them easily.
The young elder Klebengot was in our mission as a missionary.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Dad came by periodically to see him, and so we had a general authority in the mission more often than we should have, probably.
I think that missionary's in this book pictured as well, but that family's got pictures all over these books, all 3 volumes.
Daniel. But
Yeah.
we really only knew his name afterwards. Oh, we knew his name, but we never called him that.
Yeah. So he's actually mentioned in these books as well, because his dad was the mission president when they arrived to be the presidents of the temple, before he was called away to Salt Lake, and then he even came back afterwards. And so they've got all kinds of stories about them in here. So anyway, that's kind of why they did this, is so they could remember and they could go quickly find the little memories, which is the same, I think, when you're looking at the bells. The person who's got the bells, right? To her or him, they look at those bells and each story comes to their mind. And maybe that's why they keep the bells. So they can sit there, and it's like you going and finding that file and being able to tear yourself away. They pick up that one bell that day and remember the story that goes with that bell.
So the issue is, it's not the bell, but it's in what it reminds you of.
What it reminds you of, where it takes you back to, how it inspires you or makes you emotional, what it makes you feel, what you remember because of it.
How do you put that feeling in your personal history?
I would write it, because I'm a writer. You could record it. I think audio recordings might be the way to go. You got to have a picture of the bell. I think maybe for that person, they have a book of the bells and they have a picture of each bell. And with each bell, they have a short story that reminds them of how that bell touched, why they have that bell. Why did you collect that bell? Or that snow globe, or that trophy, or that degree.
Degree in neuroscience.
Paul could write up, she's gonna have to write volumes on her degree in neuroscience.
And probably will.
Anyway, that's all I got. Hopefully that was a helpful discussion to somebody. I actually learned, that made me think quite a bit about why we collect things, and maybe those people that have, I think about people I know that have collections of things, and I think they're hoarders. And to me, maybe they are, but to them, maybe each one of those things that they're collecting, stuffed animals or stamps or whatever it is, each of those things tells a story that's part of their history. And for them, they tell it to themselves when they see the item, and they're not sharing it with anyone else, or maybe they have.
You know, this brings to mind a bad thought. What happens when a fire strikes and all these mementos are now gone?
That's an interesting thought. Maybe that's why it would be a good idea to record or to write those stories about those bells if they exist, and take a photo. So at least that part is captured as a reminder and a memory, if you happen to lose the item or your kids throw it away.
Now, this lady that wrote this book, Nancy, are you keeping a digital copy so that in case she repents, she can print another copy?
We will have a digital copy so it can be printed again. Yes.
Because that's one of the important things. The direction is when you take your computer back up, you make 2 of them and you take one over to a kid, one of your children, or some close and trusted friend, and you just keep it there. And then every 6 months you rotate so that you have a current copy off-site.
Ah,
And you guys are the off-site for Nancy.
we are. Yep.
Wow.
All right. Thanks for joining us tonight.
I have another question if you want
Go for next week or for now?
for next week.
Okay.
Is the role of other people in discussions and let's say family get-togethers in remembering, and how you could preserve some of those things. I know that when you came to our house, you brought your phone and you recorded it.
Yep.
I think that there's something to be said about having a live audience.
Yeah.
And that might be something that really could help in remembering, especially if you're remembering with siblings, because then you get stories from all over.
Yeah.
And you get different versions of the same story.
Sometimes they might be accurate even.
Yeah, more accurate than your own.
Or no, nothing would be more accurate than mine, but I know what you're saying.
I wish I could say that and really mean it.
I wish I could too. We'll talk about that next week. Enjoy the rest of your evening.